I'm 81 years old, and I spent 40 of those years building a career I thought would make my life mean something. Now I sit in a quiet house that's too big for me, and I can't remember the last time it felt full. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. At my age, sympathy doesn't fix anything. I'm telling you because when you get to the end, you start seeing your life as a whole, and sometimes the picture isn't what you thought you were painting. I used to believe that hard work was love, that providing was presence, that if I kept everything running smoothly, bills paid, mortgage handled, college funds secure, then I was doing my job as a husband and a father. And I was very good at my job. I started in my early 20s, fresh out of school, wearing a cheap suit that didn't quite fit. I remember the smell of the office carpet, the way my boss shook my hand and said, "If you put in the hours, you'll go far." I put in the hours. I stayed late. I volunteered for extra projects. I answered calls at dinner. I learned how to sound confident even when I was tired. Promotions came slowly at first, then faster. Titles changed. My office got bigger. My name was on doors. At 30, I was proud. At 40, I was respected. At 50, I was important. That's what I thought. My wife, Ellen, used to wait up for me in the early years. I'd come home after 9, sometimes 10. She'd sit at the kitchen table with a book she hadn't really been reading. She'd smile and say, "Long day." I'd say, "Just for now, it'll calm down soon." It never did. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I remember holding each of them in the hospital, promising silently that I would give them everything I never had. And I did give them things. Bikes, braces, summer camps, a house in a good school district. What I didn't give them was time. But I didn't see it that way back then. When my son had his first little league game, I meant to be there. I truly did. But there was a client meeting that ran long. I told myself there would be dozens more games. When my daughter had a school recital, I sent flowers instead. I told her I was proud of her. I told myself she'd understand. There's always a reasonable explanation when you're busy. You start saying just this week, then it's just this quarter, then it's once this deal closes. Life becomes something that will happen after the next deadline. Ellen stopped waiting up eventually. We'd pass each other in the kitchen like coworkers changing shifts. She'd tell me about the kids' days. I'd nod, half listening, my mind still in the office. Sometimes she'd pause like she wanted to say something more. I'd check my watch. I wasn't cruel, I wasn't angry, I just wasn't there. Years stack quietly when you're not paying attention. I remember one night my daughter asked me to help her with a school project. She must have been 12. I was sitting at the dining room table with my briefcase open, papers spread everywhere. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" I said. She stood there for a second, then she said, "It's due tomorrow." I sighed. I remember that sigh more than anything, the way it sounded heavy and inconvenienced. She said, "It's okay, Mom will help." She didn't ask me again after that. I didn't notice the shift at the time. Children adapt. They learn who is available and who is. My son stopped asking me to throw the ball in the yard. Ellen stopped suggesting weekend trips. I was always too busy, but in a respectable way, in a way people praised. I'd run into neighbors who'd say, "You're doing so well, we see your company in the news." And I'd feel a small surge of pride. Success is loud outside your home and very quiet inside it. In my 40s, I started traveling more. Conferences, dinners, flights that blurred together. I got used to hotel rooms, the hum of air conditioners, room service trays outside other people's doors. Ellen once told me over the phone that our son had scored the winning goal in a high school game. I was in Chicago. I congratulated him later that night. He said, "Thanks, Dad," in a voice that didn't expect anything else. I told myself I was building something solid for them. Security, stability. What I was really building was distance. It didn't happen in one big argument. There was no dramatic explosion, just small disappointments that never got repaired. By the time I was 55, the kids were gone. College, apartments, lives of their own. The house got quieter. Ellen and I would sit in the living room in the evenings, the television on, neither of us really watching. We had fewer things to say, not because we hated each other. We just hadn't practiced talking in years. One night she said, very calmly, "I used to miss you even when you were sitting right next to me." I didn't know what to do with that sentence. I said I did all this for us. She nodded, "I know." That was the worst part. She wasn't accusing me. She was just stating something true. I retired at 62, earlier than some, later than others. There was a small party at the office. A plaque, speeches about leadership and dedication. People shook my hand and said I'd made a difference. I drove home with the plaque on the passenger seat. The house looked the same as it always had. But my role had disappeared overnight. For the first few weeks, I didn't know where to put myself. I'd wake up at 6 out of habit, drink coffee in silence. The phone didn't ring anymore. Emails stopped. I thought I would finally have time to reconnect, to fix what had thinned out over decades. But relationships don't restart just because your schedule clears. My son was busy with his own career. My daughter had moved to another state. When I called, they were polite, warm even, but there was a careful distance. They didn't need me the way I had imagined they would. Ellen and I tried to travel. We took a short trip to the coast. It was pleasant. We walked on the beach, ate seafood. But there was a layer of unfamiliarity between us, like we were two old friends who hadn't kept in touch. Then she got sick. It wasn't dramatic at first, just fatigue, doctor visits, tests, words you don't want to hear but somehow expect. Cancer doesn't care about retirement plans. Suddenly I had all the time in the world. I sat beside her in hospital rooms. I held her hand. I listened carefully when she spoke. One afternoon she looked at me and said, "You're here now." There was no bitterness in her voice, just a quiet observation. I wanted to tell her I was sorry for all the nights I wasn't there, for the recitals and games and conversations I postponed. But apologies feel small when time is short. She passed away 3 years after I retired. The house has been quiet ever since. Sometimes I walk past the old dining room table and think about that school project, about the sigh. It seems like such a small moment. But small moments are where life actually happens. I have photo albums, awards in boxes, a savings account that's more than enough for one old man. What I don't have are the ordinary memories I assumed would come later. The inside jokes, the shared routines, the feeling of being woven tightly into someone else's daily life. I thought there would be more time to sit at the kitchen table, more time to say, "Tell me about your day," and mean it. Time doesn't announce when it's running out, it just keeps moving. My children visit on holidays, they hug me. They're good people, I'm proud of them. But I can sense that I am a chapter in their lives, not the center of it. And that's natural, I suppose. That's how it should be. Still, I wonder what it would have been like if I had been more present when they were small. If my voice had been part of their everyday memories, instead of the background hum of someone leaving for work. Success gave me a reputation. It did not give me closeness. I used to think being remembered meant having your name attached to something important, a building, a company, a long career. Now I think being remembered is much simpler. It's being the person who showed up. If you're listening to me and you're in the middle of building something, I won't tell you to quit your job. I won't tell you ambition is wrong. It fed my family. It gave us comfort. But I will tell you this. The years when your children still look for you in the crowd are fewer than you think. The evenings when your spouse waits at the table are numbered. You don't see the last time you'll carry your child on your shoulders. You don't hear a bell when it's the final school play. It just passes. I assumed love would wait for me, while I handled more urgent things. Love is patient, yes, but it is not frozen in time. If any part of this sounds familiar, I'm not judging you. I lived it. I understand the pull of responsibility, the satisfaction of achievement. Just don't confuse being needed at work with being needed at home. They feel similar, but they are not the same. At 81, I move slower. I forget names. I repeat stories. The world I worked so hard to impress has mostly forgotten me, and that's all right. What lingers are the quiet questions that visit me in the evenings. What if I had closed the briefcase more often? What if I had let a few calls go unanswered? I can't change the answers now. All I can do is sit in this house, remember the woman who waited at the table, and hope she knew I loved her, even when I was absent. There isn't a lesson here wrapped neatly in a bow. Just a man who built a long career and realized, too late, that the most important parts of his life were happening while he was somewhere else. If this meant something to you, hold on to it quietly. Think about it on your own time. As for me, I don't have many years left. I spend them walking through rooms filled with echoes. I used to measure my life in promotions and pay raises. Now I measure it in missed dinners. And that's a hard way to count.